The most dangerous moment isn't when a narcissist is angry. It's when they finally understand you're never coming back, because at that moment they don't chase you the way you expect. They don't always beg. They don't always explode. They do something far more calculated, and almost no one talks about it. If this is resonating with you, if you've lived this shift and couldn't explain it, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, or share it with someone who needs clarity. Understanding this dynamic isn't about revenge, it's about freedom. When a narcissist reaches the point where they know you will never come back, the first and most destabilizing experience for them is the final loss of control. This is not about losing a relationship in the way a healthy person understands it. For a narcissist, control is the relationship. It is the mechanism through which they regulate their emotions, maintain their self-image, and protect themselves from feelings of inadequacy or emptiness. As long as there is even a small chance that you might return, argue, explain, or react, they still feel a sense of leverage. The knowledge that you are permanently gone removes that leverage entirely. This realization creates a profound psychological threat. Narcissistic functioning relies on the belief that they can influence how others feel, think, and respond to them. When you stop responding, stop engaging, and stop orbiting their emotional gravity, it signals that they no longer have access to your internal world. This is deeply unsettling because it confronts them with something they work tirelessly to avoid: powerlessness. Healthy individuals can tolerate powerlessness as part of life. Narcissists cannot. It triggers shame, vulnerability, and a sense of internal collapse. The loss of control also shatters the narcissist's illusion of superiority. If you can walk away and stay away, it challenges the story they tell themselves that they are indispensable, special, or irreplaceable. Your absence becomes evidence that their influence was never as absolute as they believed. Rather than processing this insight, they defend against it. They may minimize you, devalue your importance, or convince themselves that they chose to disengage. These mental distortions are not lies in the traditional sense. They are psychological survival strategies. What makes this phase particularly intense is that there is no external fix. They cannot argue you back, charm you back, or provoke you back. Without access to you, they are forced to sit with an unregulated internal state. This is why the final loss of control often leads to increased rigidity, emotional numbness, or covert hostility. It is the mind's attempt to restore dominance where none exists. When a narcissist realizes you will never come back, direct engagement becomes too risky for them, so they often shift into silent surveillance. This is not curiosity, and it is not longing in a healthy sense. It is a monitoring behavior driven by anxiety, entitlement, and the need to reassert psychological dominance without exposing themselves to rejection. Contacting you directly would mean acknowledging your autonomy, and autonomy is what threatens them most. Watching from a distance allows them to feel informed without being vulnerable. This surveillance can take many forms. They may check your social media obsessively, pay attention to who interacts with you, or gather information through mutual acquaintances. Sometimes it is subtle and covert, other times it is relentless. What matters is the motive. They are tracking whether you are suffering, stagnant, or thriving. If you appear happy or emotionally regulated, it destabilizes them. Your stability without them contradicts the narrative that you needed them to function. That contradiction creates cognitive dissonance they cannot tolerate. At the same time, they are looking for openings. Silent surveillance allows them to scan for moments of weakness, loneliness, or transition. A breakup, a loss, or even a vague emotional post can be interpreted as an invitation. This is why contact often comes long after the relationship has ended, precisely when you believe they are gone for good. In their mind, time does not signal closure, it signals opportunity. Distance gives them plausible deniability and preserves their self-image if they choose to reappear. There is also a punitive element to this behavior. By refusing to engage openly, they attempt to flip the power dynamic. Silence becomes a way to suggest that you are insignificant, while secretly ensuring that you remain psychologically present to them. They want to know that they still exist in your awareness even if they are no longer visible. This is not absence. It is control through invisibility. What makes silent surveillance particularly unsettling is that it is fueled by entitlement. They believe they have a right to information about you because you once served a psychological function for them. Even after you leave, that sense of ownership does not disappear. Watching you from afar allows them to avoid accountability while maintaining the illusion that they are still connected, still relevant, still positioned above rather than outside your life. When a narcissist knows you are never coming back, they often shift into what can be described as image repair mode. This is not about self-reflection or growth. It is a strategic response to the threat their ego has experienced. Your permanent departure creates a rupture in the story they tell themselves and others about who they are. To a narcissist, being seen as rejected, abandoned, or left behind is intolerable. It suggests deficiency, and deficiency is something they cannot psychologically integrate. So instead of processing the loss internally, they move outward and begin managing perception. They become preoccupied with how the situation looks rather than what it means. Conversations are subtly edited. Details are omitted, distorted, or reframed. You are recast as unstable, ungrateful, overly sensitive, or impossible to please. This is not always done with obvious malice. Often it is delivered calmly, even convincingly, because they believe it themselves in that moment. The goal is not to understand the truth, but to eliminate any version of the story in which they are at fault. Responsibility would require shame, and shame is psychologically annihilating for them. Image repair also serves another function. It reassures them that they still hold social power. By controlling the narrative, they attempt to control the emotional responses of others. Sympathy, validation, and allegiance from friends or family act as substitutes for the regulation you once provided. Each nod of agreement reinforces their belief that they are justified, misunderstood, or even victimized. This external validation becomes a temporary scaffold holding their self-image together. What is particularly important to understand is that this behavior intensifies when you are silent. Your refusal to defend yourself, explain, or correct the record removes their opportunity for direct conflict. Without your participation, they are free to construct a one-sided reality. This can feel deeply unfair, especially when you know the truth. But for the narcissist, the absence of your voice is interpreted as permission, not dignity. This phase often includes performative happiness, exaggerated success, or sudden displays of moral superiority. These are not signs of peace. They are visual props meant to signal that they are thriving without you, that losing you had no impact, that nothing of value was lost, all of which exist to protect a fragile internal structure that has already been destabilized. When a narcissist knows you are never coming back, immediate attempts to pull you back often stop, not because they have accepted the loss, but because timing becomes everything. This is where delayed hoovering emerges. The delay is intentional. Reaching out too soon risks rejection, and rejection would confirm their loss of control. Waiting allows them to regain a sense of psychological advantage. Distance dulls your emotional defenses in their mind, not because you forget the harm, but because they believe time weakens boundaries. Delayed hoovering is rooted in entitlement rather than attachment. They do not experience time the way emotionally healthy people do. To them, relationships are not closed chapters. They are resources placed on a shelf. Even years later, they may feel justified in reappearing because they never processed the relationship as a mutual bond with an end. They processed it as an extension of themselves that malfunctioned. The delay helps them preserve the fantasy that access can be restored when conditions feel favorable. These attempts often arrive quietly and indirectly. A neutral message, a nostalgic reference, a sudden apology without accountability, or a fabricated crisis designed to trigger empathy. The tone is often softer than before because aggression failed. What they are testing is not reconciliation, but responsiveness. A reply, even a polite one, signals that the door is not fully closed. That signal matters more to them than the content of the conversation. Delayed hoovering also allows them to rewrite history internally. With enough time, they convince themselves that the conflict was mutual, exaggerated, or resolved by distance alone. This mental revision reduces the risk of shame when they reach out. They are not returning as someone who caused harm. They are returning as someone checking in, offering closure, or extending goodwill. This reframing protects their ego while positioning you as the one who must decide how kind, mature, or forgiving to be. What makes delayed hoovering particularly destabilizing is that it often occurs when you are doing better. Stability, growth, or emotional detachment registers as a challenge to their significance. The reach out is not a sign of missing you. It is a reaction to no longer occupying space in your inner world. The timing is rarely accidental. It coincides with moments when they sense that your independence has solidified, and the attempt becomes a last effort to reinsert themselves, not to rebuild connection, but to reassert relevance in a dynamic they believe should never fully end. When a narcissist knows you will never come back, rewriting history becomes a psychological necessity rather than a choice. The reality of the relationship threatens their self-concept, so the past must be reshaped into something they can live with. They cannot hold a narrative in which they caused harm and still see themselves as competent, superior, or justified. Accepting the full truth would require accountability, and accountability activates shame. For a narcissist, shame is not a mild emotion. It feels annihilating. To avoid it, memory itself becomes flexible. This rewriting often happens quietly and gradually. Events are minimized, altered, or stripped of emotional weight. Moments where you express pain are reframed as overreactions. Boundaries you set are recalled as betrayals. Their manipulative or abusive behaviors are reinterpreted as reasonable responses to your supposed flaws. Over time, this distorted version of the past becomes the only one they can access. It is not that they are consciously lying at every turn. It is that their mind selectively edits reality to preserve psychological survival. What makes this process particularly destabilizing for those who live the relationship is how confidently the narcissist holds this revised story. They speak with certainty, often with moral clarity about what really happened. This conviction can cause self-doubt in others, especially if you were already conditioned to question your perceptions. The rewritten history is not just a private defense mechanism, it becomes a tool. It is used to justify their behavior, recruit sympathy, and position themselves as misunderstood or wronged. Rewriting history also allows them to detach emotionally without grieving. Healthy separation requires acknowledging both the good and the harm. Narcissists cannot integrate complexity. By flattening the past into a story where they were reasonable and you were difficult, they eliminate emotional conflict. This simplification protects them from loss, remorse, and vulnerability. It also preserves the fantasy that nothing meaningful was lost when you left. Over time, this altered narrative becomes the foundation for future interactions. If they ever reach out again, they do so from this revised version of reality. Apologies lack depth because the harm no longer exists in their memory. Accountability feels unnecessary because, in their mind, there is nothing to account for. This is why conversations about closure feel circular and invalidating. You are speaking from lived experience, while they are speaking from a reconstructed past designed to defend against psychological collapse. When a narcissist knows you are never coming back, seeking a replacement is rarely about connection or healing. It is about distraction from an internal state they cannot tolerate. Your absence creates a vacuum, not of love, but of regulation. You once absorbed their emotions, validated their identity, and stabilized their self-image. Without that function, they experience restlessness, irritability, and a sense of internal chaos. A new person becomes a way to silence that discomfort rather than address it. This replacement is often rushed and superficial. Intimacy appears intense early on because it is performative, not earned. The narcissist mirrors, idealizes, and accelerates attachment to recreate the emotional control they lost with you. What looks like moving on is actually an attempt to overwrite the destabilizing impact of your departure. They are not choosing someone new because that person fits them better. They are choosing whoever is available, responsive, and emotionally open enough to plug the gap you left. Importantly, this new connection is not evidence that you were replaceable. It is evidence that they cannot sit with themselves. Solitude forces self-awareness, and self-awareness threatens the fragile structure they rely on. The replacement allows them to avoid introspection entirely. As long as someone else is reacting to them, admiring them, or struggling to please them, they do not have to confront the loss of control your absence represents. This dynamic also serves an external purpose. Being seen with someone new helps them reinforce the image that they are desirable, wanted, and unaffected. It is a way to communicate indirectly that they are winning. The relationship becomes a prop rather than a bond. The new person is unconsciously assigned a role, not welcomed as an equal. They are expected to regulate emotions, validate identity, and absorb projections, just as you once did. Over time, the same patterns emerge because nothing has changed internally. The charm fades, the entitlement surfaces, and the emotional demands escalate. The replacement is not spared because the issue was never you. It was the narcissist's dependence on external sources to manage an unstable inner world. Your departure did not cause this cycle. It exposed it. When a narcissist knows you are never coming back, one of the more subtle responses is punitive indifference. This is not genuine detachment or emotional maturity. It is a defensive posture designed to reclaim a sense of superiority after the loss of control. By acting as though you never mattered, they attempt to reverse the power dynamic. If they can convince themselves and others that you were insignificant, then your departure no longer feels like a rejection. It feels like a dismissal they chose. This indifference is often performative. It may show up as sudden emotional coldness, refusal to acknowledge shared history, or an almost exaggerated lack of reaction. The message they want to convey is that your presence was irrelevant and your absence inconsequential. This stance protects them from vulnerability. Admitting that you mattered would mean admitting loss, and loss would mean facing pain they are not equipped to process. At the same time, punitive indifference serves as a form of punishment. It is meant to provoke self-doubt, hurt, or confusion in you. If you feel erased, minimized, or dismissed, they regain a sense of influence over your emotional state without having to engage directly. This is especially effective if you were once deeply connected. The contrast between former intensity and present indifference can feel destabilizing, which is precisely the point. What makes this behavior particularly complex is that it often coexists with private preoccupation. Publicly, they act unbothered. Privately, they may still monitor, ruminate, or feel threatened by your progress. The indifference is a shield, not a reflection of inner peace. It allows them to maintain an image of control while avoiding the risk of exposure that direct contact would bring. Punitive indifference also reinforces their internal narrative. By treating you as though you never mattered, they can avoid integrating the reality that you were important and that your departure had consequences. This emotional erasure is not about healing, it is about containment. It is a way to seal off a wound without cleaning it, to cover loss with superiority. The absence of visible reaction is not proof that you were unimportant. It is proof that acknowledging your importance would destabilize them more than they can tolerate. When a narcissist knows you are never coming back, there is often a striking split between what they show the world and what is happening internally. On the surface, they may appear calm, rational, even relieved. They present an image of composure that suggests acceptance and emotional control. This outer calm is not a sign of resolution. It is a defensive performance designed to prevent further injury to a fragile self-structure. Inside, however, the loss has created significant destabilization that they cannot safely acknowledge.